Zevachim Zevachim Daf Pei Beis Amud Aleph. We're starting from Pei Aleph Amud Beis, 6 lines from the bottom of the Mishnah. And Iton B'fnim, those bloods of Achatas Pnimis that normally is sprayed on the Mizbeach HaPnimish, and it's our Baniton B'chutz that got mixed up with the blood of Achatas Chitzens, which is sprayed on the Mizbeach HaChitzin. Shach Lama. The din is that they poured it into the drain, into the canal. Nasan, if he took from the mixed blood B'chutz and placed it on the Mizbeach HaChitzin, and then he placed it back on the Mizbeach HaPnimi, kosher. Both karbanos are kosher. But if he took from the taruvis b'fnim, he sprayed the first inside, and then he sprayed it on the outside, Rabbi Akiva Paisel. Rabbi Akiva passes the cup machitzain because the blood of the chitzin already went into the eichel and became possible. And the Chacham say it's kosher. Rabbi Akiva, now the reason why Rabbi Akiva says it's possible because he holds cold on him. All blood which is ra'ui to place b'chutz, and it was brought in shenichnasu, and it was brought in l'chap b'heichol to be forgiven in the heichol psul the apostle. And the Chacham say that this psul is only by chatas bovad, is only by a chatas alone, but not by all the other kabbanis. You could include asham, because asham is compared to a chatas. Like it says in the pasuk, it should be one din. That means chatas, and so the Torah compares through a hekesh. It says next to each other, chatas asham to chatas. In fact, you might have been niflig, not me. Rabbi Lezer, in the previous Pedic, paskin that if the blood of one carbon, let's say of a oila, which is normally sprayed lemat mechotasika, got mixed up with a chatas, which is lemayla mechotasika. So you take the blood, and if the blood was sprayed lemayla mechotasika, so you have a mixture of the blood from the oila, which is supposed to be lamata. We say it's like that extra that went up is like water. So say the why is Abelaz over here parceling l'cheda, even in the Reish of our Mishnah, he should also say l'chatchila that if he sprays the taruvis dam of the chutz together with the bifnim, and he does it inside the heichal by the mizbeach hapnimi, why shouldn't he hold that it should be good? And the extra dam from the chatz chitzeni, which is possible, will say that's like water. Says the Gemara, how would he be able to perform this? That he should first spray the blood of the chutz on the mizbeach hachitza and then together spray in the mizbeach hapnimi. That's impossible. Just like it's a mitzvah to be magdim those kabbanis of blood before those kabbanis of blood that is lamat mechotatzika. So too it's a mitzvah to be magdim the blood that belongs to the heichal and to the mizbeach hapnimi before the mizbeach hachetzeni. And if you're going to say, okay, let's take the blood from the pnim, and afterwards place the blood on the bachutz, Rabbi Lezer himself says that's impossible, because he says chatas and asham are going to be possible. You're right. Other kabbanis, if you bring in the blood of other kabbanis, if you bring it in, it doesn't become possible. But a chatas and asham does, and kivan. So that's how you want to say that the shar kabbanis, aside from chatas and asham, which is not by bringing that dam into heichal, that's how you should do it. That you should first spray the bifnim and then bachutz. You're right. By other kabbanis it would work out, but given the ikar chatzis v'hasham, since there is also kabbanis chatzis v'hasham, where the halacha is the chinichnas dam and the psulim, that if the moment you bring it into the heichal, the dam becomes pasul. So therefore, like psikalei, therefore Rabbi Lezer wasn't able to paskin as a blanket psak, because there are those like the chatzis and asham which wouldn't be good. And the Gemara is now dealing with the machlokes of Rabbi Akiva Chacham and now Mishnah show you Rabbi Akiva Ima that all bloods that were brought into the Heichal are apostle, and the Chacham say only Chatayis are apostle, because only Chatayis are specifically mentioned in the Torah. Rabbi Yehuda Mashmol, and Rabbi Yehuda said to explain the reason of Rabbi Akiva, that he says all of it is going to be possible. He gives a marshal. The Rabbi Akiva, what is it compared to? The Talmud, Rabbi Bechamim, a Talmud that diluted the wine for his teacher with warm water. And his teacher said, add another kais mixed with chamin. Amalei, the Talmud said, which water do you want? Amalei, aren't we already dealing with warm water till now? So why did I tell you again bechamim? Obviously, you have to think. I wouldn't have to tell you bechamim if till now it was bechamim. So Elashav, only when I said chama another time, I didn't mean dafke bechamim. I meant bei bechamim bei metzena. That whether if it's warm or cold, you could dilute the wine with. Achanami, so too. Mechti bechatas askina. We're already dealing with a chatas from the previous pasuk. It says, in pasuk Yudches it says Zeister is chatas, and in pasuk Chav Gimel it says V'chol chatas. So these, so you said already the word chatos, we're talking about the zeis chatos. Zeis chatos. So now it says again, v'chol chatos in Pasuk Gimel. We already said the word zeis chatos. And then it says, v'chol chatos, so chatos the kosachmana, and then again, v'chol chatos. Why do I have to say it again? Ella, only the word chatos is lav chatos. It doesn't mean dafke chatos. When the Torah wants to talk about the psul, Ella even, it means only even with a chatos, b'chol kadashim, but it means all kabanis. Because chan, he means even chatos. When he said it a second time, even warm water, just like by the. When he asked him again, give me another case of warm water, he meant even warm water, but cold water too. But it includes here also even chatas, meaning all the kabardas are also included, that they become possible when you bring in Heichal. We have in the next pasuk, right where it speaks about, right after where it speaks about the dama chatz shenichas lehechel is nifsal, it says that the all kadashim that were all karbanis that were sacrificed on the mizbeach, and so that kli where the carbon was in, the meat was in, has to be rinsed out. Now, if the Torah wanted to say the psul adam that's nichnas lehechel is by all the karbanis, chatas the kos hachmana lameli. Why does he have to mention chatas? It already says benegay to menika ushtifa benegay to rinsing out the carbon about all the kabanis. So why do you have to now say the word chatas? Shmami nod zarai from here chatas in. He means to tell you specifically chatas is going to be also if you burn it into heichal, but midachin alay. But if it's another carbon, not. So, and Avhuna says. And it completes the kasha. If you want to use the mashal, only the mashal will be like this: a Talmud that diluted many cases of wine for his teacher with warm and cold water, no specific category. And then his rabbi asked him he should dilute it with warm water. And when the Talmud asked him, what's your kavanah, amalei, meaning when he asked him, what's your kavanah, when he said warm water, amalei, so the Rav said, don't you see clearly? I meant dafke with warm water. Because till now you were doing with both. And then I told you with warm water, so now I made it clear. Here also, till now it was all kadashim that you said you needed to rinse out all kabbanis, and then when he came to talk about the psula bringing dam into the heichal, he said chatas. Obviously, you mean dafke chatas. If not, you wouldn't have brought the word chatas. Rabbi Akiva, only the reason of Rabbi Akiva is mechatas v'kol chatas. He learns from this that the Torah could have written chatas hashayum medama, chatas that's brought from it into the heichal. It's going to be possible, and instead the Torah wrote v'chol. The Tanya that we learned from Raisa, the dam that's brought into the heichal becomes possible. So chatas ainly I only know the dining is only element chatas. Kachi b'nayim. From where do I know that even kachi in other kabbanes, it's also going to be possible if you bring it into the heichal? Talmud Lema comes the Torah and says kol chatas, the word kol, to include kachi and other kabbanes of kachi. If the blood of those kabbanes were brought into the heichal, it will be possible. Kachim kalam b'nayim. From where do I know even kachim kalam? Talmud Lema comes the Torah and says the vav of vichol. He added an extra one. Could have said kol, and it says vichol chatas to teach us even kachim kalam. Rabbi Akiva. Those are the words of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Yisrael Aglili said to Rabbi Akiva, "Afila atam Rabba." Even if you're going to include all the kabbanis, kol hayom kulei, all day, ein shemelach, I'm not going to listen to you. Since in the pasuk it says beferish chatos, and it doesn't say other kabbanis, so I'm going to use the dasha within chatos itself, not other kabbanis. Chatos, he asked that it's come to tell you chatos becomes possible by entering into taking the blood and entering into the heichal. I only know elam chatos yachid. We're going to talk about it only in chatos because the Torah doesn't mention any other kabbanis, only in chatos. So all the lemudim will be within chatos. So I only know chatos yachid, the blood of chatos yachid, if it's brought into the heichal, that it's going to be pas chatos tzibur. How do I know chatos tzibur? Talmud Lema comes the pasuk and says kol chatos. To include even the chatas tzibur. Mainly, I only know a chatas zacha. Only a chatas that's brought from a behemoth, which is a min zacha. Chatas nekeva v'nayim. How do I know a chatas nekeva? Says you want to have a like v'chol. Comes the pasuk v'chol and teaches us that comes the pasuk v'chol and teaches us that that even the zacha. In fact, the Gemara klapalai is just the opposite. Most of the kabbanis, why is I'm sorry, only chatas. So we only know chatas mainly chatas nekeva. Where do we know chatas nekeva? So the Gemara Tamalayim of vichol, the vav of vichol comes to include a nekeva. So the Gemara klapalai is just the opposite. Most of the kabbanis are from a nekeva. The pasuk is dealing by chatz nekeva. So how can you say you need v'chol to include chatz nekeva if that's the normal kabbalah? Come on, this is how you have to say it. Ainly el chatz nekeva. I only know chatz nekeva that it's going to be possible if you brought in the blood into the heichal chatz zachem minayim. From where do I know chatz zachem? Tamalem v'chol chatz. That's how you have to change the gears of the in fact, the mother. Does Rabbi Yossi Aguli learn from this pasuk that the chatas chitzoina becomes possible when the blood is brought into the heichal? About time we learned another brayso. Rabbi Yossi Aguli this whole pasuk is all talking about a chatas by a pan hanelam in atzibor, where you the parim of the chatos hapnimius. The parim and the seirim that are burned. What is it coming to tell you? Lisev as psuleim bebeis habira, that if these kabbanas became possible, normally a pasul carbon you take it out of the three machnes, but not by the psula of the parim and the seirim that were sacrificed in the mizbeich hapnimi, in the heichal. There you can only burn it in the hazara if it became possible. The lamed malay sasa al achilas, and to be mechayiv, don't want to eat these kabbanis because of a mitzvah loy sasa. According to Rabbi Yossi Agili, whoever eats from the b'sar of the chatz sapnimis, whether it's possible or kosher, is able on loy sachil. This is not mentioned only in the ikei halachas of chatz sapnimi. Okay, anyways, Amalai, so the Chacham said, according to your words, Chatas Chitzayna, Shenichnas Dama Lefnai, Lefnim Menai. How do we know a Chatas Chitzayna that the blood is brought Lefnai, Lefnim is going to be possible? If here he's only, the Liban is coming to tell you about the Par and the Sawyer, which is from the Mizbeach HaPnimi there, the halacha is that if it became possible, it has to be burnt in the Hazara. So how do they know that the blood of a Chatzis Chitzayna that's brought into Lefnai Lefnim is going to be possible? Menai Amalahem. So he said to them, Hey Loihuva. It says they did not bring, meaning the story with Moshe Rabbeinu speaking to Aaron about the death of Nadav Avihu. So Aaron said it wasn't because they brought the blood, Allah Kiddush, Pnima, that they brought from the Chitzayna into the Pnima. So you could dashen, or you can learn out that if they would have brought the dam into the Kodesh, for sure they would have bedin. They should that they should have been burned. So from this, but I see, according to Rabbi Yosef Aguli, the Chol Chatos is not come to teach you about the Psul Chatos Chitzena, which is brought into the Heichal. That the Chol Chatos has nothing to do. That's not where we learn it out. That Chatos Chitzena brought into the Pnimi is going to be possible. I'd rather we learn it out from a different pasuk, and not from the words of Chol Chatos. And in the first Baraisa, Rabbi Yosef Agili, he said, according to the words of Rabbi Akiva, how do you dashen the pasuk? From where do we learn out that we should have learned it out in Chatas? In the word Chatas, all the limudim should have been in the word Chatas, but he himself dashens like the second Baraisa from the words of Hey Lehuva. That's where he learns out that the dam of Chitzayni is dam of a carbon. Chitzayni is that belongs on the Mizbeach HaPnim that was brought into the Heichel becomes possible from the words of Hey Lehuva dam. Sag ich mal, Chatas Chitzayna Shenishchita, the Chatas Chitzayna that was slaughtered, Vekimel, and he received the blood. It was so much, he received it Mishnei cases in 2 cups. If he took one of the cases outside the Hazara, and that case became possible, what happens with the remaining cup in the Hazara? The remaining cup that remained in the Hazara, kasha is going to be kasha. And meaning that you spread it on the Mizbeach and the cup is kasha. What's nichnas echad mehem lifnim? But what's if from the 2 cups, one he brought into the Heichel and it became possible? Rabbi Yosef Agili says the remaining cup that's still in the Hazara could be used to spray on the Mizbeach HaChitzayna and the cup is kasha. Chacham Paislim, Chacham say no, the dam Chatz Chitzayna, if it went into the Heichel, all the dam becomes possible. Rabbi Yosef Agili. Rabbi Yosef brings a raya to his shita. He says, I have a svara, a kavachema, that the damach, the leftover dam in the chitzon is kosher. Ma im bebakum sham achshav peselos b'chutz. Ma doch the machshava. If he had a machshava if he shachs one of these comments on the condition to spray the dam outside, the carbon would be puzzle. Nevertheless, if he physically took out part of the dam lachutz, and nevertheless, the case if he physically took out one of the cases outside and it became puzzle, loy asa, as Hamishur Kayait said, we didn't do the remaining cup in the Hazara. We didn't make it puzzle. Rather, we made the remaining cup in the Hazara kasha, even though one he physically took out is puzzle. The one remaining in the Hazara is kasha, even though b'machshava, if he would have had a machshava is chutz the spade outside, it would have been, the whole thing would have become puzzle. But if you took out one case outside physically, so you would say the remaining is kasha. So when it comes to somebody having, when he shechted the carbon where he had to spray it on the Mizbeach HaChitzoni, and he had in mind to spray it on the Mizbeach HaPnimi, you say that it doesn't passel the blood? Shouldn't we say that the blood that he physically brought into the Pnim, that the remaining blood for sure should be kosher? Because chutz is more chamor. Mashavas chutz passels the whole carbon. Mashavas Pnim doesn't. And by Mashavas chutz, you say the remaining cup is that remaining cup in the Azara is kosher, even though the Mashavas chutz is passels everything. So for sure, by Mashavas Pnim, where it doesn't passel, for sure the remaining cup in the Azara should be kosher. And the Mishnah continues to explain in which way does the dam chatas chitzena that was brought into the heichel nichnas, meaning that the dam chatas chitzena that was brought into the heichel lechaper to forgive almanas, meaning almanas to spray it inside afapi shalei keeper, even though the b'seiv he didn't spray from it puzzle. It still becomes possible, even though he didn't actually spray. The dam doesn't become possible till he actually sprays it on the mizbeach. Then the dam becomes possible. Rabbi Yehuda says, just by the mere fact that he brought the dam into the heichel, even I'm sorry. Rabbi Yehuda says, if by mistake he brought the dam of the chitzen into the heichel, but b'sheigeg, the dam is going to be kosher. The Mishnah finishes off, kol hadam psulim, all the blood which are puzzled like adamam shachatreis chitzens that was brought lifnim, or was brought outside to the azara. Shenitnu hagam mizbeach, that was placed on the mizbeach, loy hitza tzitz. The tzitz is not going to be mechaper, it's not going to be meratza, and the bailam are not going to be forgiven. If he took the dama of the chitzoni and brought it lefnim, or he took it outside the azara, el atame. The only time that it's going to be meratza is only on a tame, meaning on a psul, that the dam became that the dam was the carbon became tame, and the dam became tame in middle that was played on the mizbeach. Then the tzitz is going to be meratza. Shatzitz meratza ala tam ve'ein meratza ala yitza. The tzitz helps that it should forgive on dam of tummy, but it's not on dam that left the azara or that became possible because of any other thing other than tumah. So Benegay to the chatas that the kohen received b'shnei kaises. Tanya, we learned in Rabbi Yosef Aguli. Rabbi Yosef Aguli had said, we kedash mekal v'chema, that the kais that entered into the heichal will not passel the remaining kais in the azara. In a place where the machshava passels the carbon, meaning machutz v'shachted. Amanas to spray the blood outside the Hazara, the carbon is possible. Nevertheless, if he took out one of the cases outside the Hazara, the remaining case in the Hazara, like possible dam shebechutz as shenish befnim. The blood that he physically took outside the Hazara doesn't pass the remaining blood that's in the Hazara. How much more so if he had a machshava to spray the blood of the chitzen in the pnim, where the machshava doesn't pass the carbon, for sure, if he physically took one case into the pnim, the dam, the remaining case in the azara should for sure be kosher. So the chacham shlag up the raya. Yeah, it's a good kavachema, but it says in the pasuk midama. So it says of the blood. That means even if you took part of the blood and brought it inside the pnim, it doesn't say dama all of the blood. It says only part. That means part was left in azara. So afilu mixes dama. So you have exes hakas that even if part of the blood was brought in the heichal and the remaining blood was nazar, it's going to be possible, even though mitzad hasvara of the kavachem it should be kosher. it should be kosher mitzad disfara, but since we haven't said so, it's not going to become kosher. So Rabbi Yosef said, "Kavachem alay yitz me'ato l'chayda yikedash a kavachem like this, that even the dam which went outside the Hazara passes all the dam. Why should we say the dam that goes outside the Hazara should pass all the dam? Where if he had a machshava while shachting to spray the blood that belongs to the mizbeach hachitza, and he had a mind to the mizbeach hapnimi bifnim, he had a mind to spray the blood in the heichal. The blood doesn't become possible because of the machshava. But if he physically brings in one case of dam into the pnim, paisel dam shabifnim, as adam shenish bachutz, it does passel even the remaining blood in the azara, even though the machshava doesn't passel it. Makom shemachshava paiseles bachutz. When it comes to machshava, where he had it was a blood that had to be sprayed on mizbeach hachitzin, and he had in mind to spray the outside the hazara, that machshava does passel all the blood. As hadam shenish befnim, so for sure it should passel when he physically takes out the one case of blood, and it should passel the remaining blood in the hazara, because the machshava. Madach with the mashava doesn't pass all the dam, but when he takes physically into the kodesh hakadashim, the blood in the hazara becomes passel. A place where the mashava does pass all the dam, where he had in mind to spray the outside the hazara, for sure. If he brought physically a case outside the hazara, the remaining case should be passel. It's mitzadik zeis hakasim. It's only the blood that will be brought. Miyuga means to bring in, hanichnas. Only when you're bringing into the heichel paisel will it be passel the remaining blood. But ein hayoitza, but not the yoitza paisel. It says yuva and midama. It says only those that will be brought of the blood inside, excluding if you took it outside, it's not going to passel. The machshavas of having in mind to spread in the heichal paiseles, it should be the machshavas should pass all the dam. Mikavachem we should learn how from nakavachem. Uma b'makim shalei pass all dam b'chutz. Madoch in a place where he physically takes it out of the hazara, the dam of the chutz doesn't passel as hadam shenish bifnim, doesn't passel the remaining blood, that the kais that was left in hazara, machshava, but the machshava paisels bachutz, but the machshava does passel the whole carbon. Makim shepasel dam shebifnim, a place where if you brought inside, like when we brought from the pasuk, if you brought inside part of the one kais, it will passel as adam shebechutz. It would passel the kais that's left in the hazara. And it didn't should take machshava paiselas. For sure, if he had the machshava to do it, sure it should be possible b'fnim. Madach by bachutz, the physical kais that you take outside doesn't passel the kais that's left inside the hazara, but the machshava does passel it. By pnim, where he brought physically a kais b'fnim, it does passel it. For sure, the machshava should passel it. And the Gemara harei oima b'negeya to machshava a pigul or machshava of spraying it in the wrong place. We have a gzeirus hakasser. It says by yom hashlishi. What does by yom hashlishi mean? By yom hashlishi over here doesn't mean that he had a mind lachazmanei, rather chutz l'mkoimei. It's talking about these three avodas of spraying the blood, eating the b'sar kabim, and the haktar seimurim. Meaning it has to be mishulish of these three. That's the only three that was mutter in the time of bamais. So those when it says by Yom HaShlishi, he means that in the heichel only the heichal there wasn't the mishulish of the avodas, meaning the kabbanis that the damam was nizik beheichal wasn't a place that you could burn the murim or to eat the meat. So therefore, the heichal is not mishulish, because in the heichal the only thing that was good, that was only avodah that was used, that was not constricted in the time of bamis, was the dam was nizik beheichal versus bamis weren't. But it has to be mishulish. Mishulish, there were 3 avodas by the bamis that it could be anywhere, like the Haktor Seimurim, Achilas Habasa, and the Zrikas Dam. So only where do you have these 3 avodas constricted together? Only in the Hazara by the Mizbeach HaChitzayin. Only in those where those 3 were mutter by bamis and not mutter by the Beis Hamikdash, that's where the din of pigul will be, but not in the heichal, because in the heichal you don't have 2 of those havedas existing, like the burning of the emurim and the achilas basa was not done in the heichal. The only thing that was done in the heichal was the dam, was nisim heichal. So therefore, the din of pigul doesn't apply there. So therefore, the machshava will be kosher. The machshava that he had in the heichal doesn't constitute it as pigul, because pigul can only be if it's mishulish, only in a place where all these 3 avodas can be done, versus meaning in comparison to the bamis where there was no constrictions on them. In fact, let the machshava, if he shechted the mashal amanas to spray the blood bachutz, it should not be puzzle, meaning if he shechted amanas to spray bachutz, why it should not be puzzle? We should learn out from the kavachayim. Ma b'makrim, madach pnim, where there's the chumrah shepasul dam shenichnas lefim shenish bachutz. Where if you physically brought in one case, it would passel the dam remaining in that zara. But a machshava pesels, but the machshava, the thought of while shechting it, spraying it in the, having in mind to spray it in the mizbeich hapnimi, does not passel it. Befnim, like we dashing from the word shlishi, malkim shalei passel dam sheyatze bechutz es adam shenivim befnim. In a place where they physically took out the blood outside the Hazara, where it doesn't pass the remaining kois that's in the Hazara, for sure the machshava shouldn't passel if he had a mind to spray it outside the Hazara. It should at least have the same din as by machshavas pnim, because by machshavas pnim you say it's kosher. But if you physically brought in one case, it passels the remaining case in the Hazara. But machshav is good. Here, it doesn't pass the remaining case in the Hazara. So for sure, the machshavas chutz for sure shouldn't be puzzled. If you want to Talmud Leiman, we have a Zeder Sakosov. It says in the pasuk, so the shlishi tells you chutz lizmanoi, and then that goes on chutz lizmanoi, like we said before. And pigul, it's yiyah. It says the extra word pigul. Pigul, the extra word is chutz limkaimai. That if he did one of the avodas of the carbon almanas to spray it chutz limkaimai, chutz la'azara, that the extra word pigul comes to tell you that the carbon, that machshava will make the carbon puzzle, and the kavachayim cannot uproot the yitur of the word pigul. So you want a basa. We learn in Habrais about a different halacha, basa yetz lechutz, the meat that went outside from the allotted place, pasol. Alabasa nichnas lefnim. Now we're not talking about dam, we're talking about basa. But basa that was brought into the heichal, kosher is going to be kosher. Shehei medin shepasol, even though it would have been right to learn out from Makavachema that basa should also be pasol. How? Ma b'makei madach. Outside the Hazara, where there's a kulash loy pasal dam shebechutz shenish befnim, where he took out one case of dam, it didn't pasal the remaining dam befnim. Basa Yetzel Chutz, puzzle. But nevertheless, you say the Basa Yetzel Chutz is puzzle. So it's a Makim. When it's Pnim, which is more Chamas, Shepasal Dam, the Shenichnes Befnim, Es Adam Shenishtay Bachutz, where when you're dealing with Pnim, if you brought in the physical case into the Pnim, which passes the remaining Dam in the Azara, Basa Nichnes Befnim, Ein Edin Sheyivsel, so the Basa Nichnes Befnim should for sure be puzzle. So why do we say it's kasha? By Chatz Chitzena, it says mi dama. We have exedus hakasa when it comes to blood. Mi dama means dafka by blood. Only of a part of the blood was brought in will pass the remaining blood. So he says dama, dafka blood, basa, not meat. If part of the meat he brought in, or it's not by meat, it's doesn't have the same din as blood. Because it said that it says with fadish the word dama. In fact, the Braisa Kavachayma let's dash in the Kavachayma that even basa it's lechutz. You said it's possible should be kosher with a Kavachayma. We should make it kosher. If in the pnim, which is more chamash, apostle dam shenisha befnim is adam shenish b'chutz. If you brought in one case into the pnim, it passes the remaining blood that's in the azara. Basa nichtas lefnim kosher, but nevertheless you say if you brought the meat inside its kosher, makim shalai pasal dam shenichutz es shenish b'fnim, and by blood that was taken outside the azara, which doesn't pass the case that's left inside the azara, basa yetz lechutz and yedin shekosher. So basa with the meat that was taken outside for sure should be kosher. You want to know about it's exact sakasiv that it's possible by bas machutz. It says meat in the field of the treifa you should eat. Since the basa that was taken outside of mechitza is like the meat which is found in the field, which is no mechitzas, it's like taken out of mechitzas. Nesa becomes asur like basa treifa. So this issa is including also basa kachim that went outside its mechitza, right? Or outside the azara, that it becomes asur like eating basa treifa. We learned in the Braisa, it says in the Torah, Moshe Rabbeinu said to Aaron HaKohen, Pnima. It said the word Pnima, Eli. So we learned how the Chatz Chitzena that was blood was brought inside the Heichal is puzzle. Ella Pnima, only if it was brought into the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Pnima means only into the Kodesh HaKadoshim. But what's if Heichal? What's if it's brought only into the Heichal Menayin? How do we know? The Heichel is also puzzle because the Heichel is before the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Why do you have to say Kodesh? The actual word Kodesh is coming to tell you even the Heichel. In fact, you want to be Yom Kodesh, just say the Heichel, and automatically, Madach in the Heichel, the Dam is going to be puzzle. For sure, Pnima in the Kodesh HaKadoshim is going to be puzzle. He says, if it would have only said Kodesh, I would have said that goes on the Kodesh HaKadoshim. But now that it says Pnima, so there's two levels. Kodesh will go on the Heichel, and the Pnima will go on the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Where do we see a similar limit like that, a similar thought like that? We find by Atesh V'Sachar B'Negei to the Isa of Achilas Truma, the Tanya that we learned in the Braisa. It says Teishav is an Evedivi that's Nirtza. He's acquired till Yovel, and Sacher Zeh Kani like Kinyan Shanim is a Stam Evedivi that's not a Nirtza that goes out after 6 years. In fact, the Gemara, if you say both cannot eat Truma, Yom Teishav, let him just say Teishav, which is Eved Nirtza. Well, Yom Sacher, don't say about a Sacher who's only acquired for 6 years. I'll say from a svara. One who was kind of till Yevel cannot eat Truma. Like Oshkein. Somebody who's only kind of for Kinyasham for sure. And for the Gemara, so Elokein, how you say Shanim? I would have said, if I would have only said the word Tesha, I would have said it goes on Eved that's acquired for 6 years. Aval Eved Nirtza, Koni Kinyan Elam, meaning Eved, which is a Nitza, which is Koni Kinyan Elam, I would have thought Yehechel, that he could eat Truma. But Sachir would limit al Teishav. That's why he brought Sachir, and to tell you that Teishav is a Nirtza, and Sachir is for 6 years. Shazeh Koni Kinyan Elam. V'zen Asach is Kani Kinyan Shanim Ein Eichel, and he cannot eat. But otherwise, I would have said, if it would have only said one, I would have said it goes only on Kani Kinyan Shanim. If it would have said only Kaddish, I would have said it goes only on Kaddish HaKadoshim. But now that it says Pnima also, now I say Kaddish goes on the Heichel and Pnima goes on Kaddish HaKadoshim. Amalei Abaye said to Rabba, Bishlem Hasam, I understand by Teish V'Sachir. Eved Nirtza and Eved Shenia Nirtza Feiko Fininu. They are two different bodies. So it's possible to have both in your house. Eved, which is a Nirtza, Eved, which is not a Nirtza. Even though the Pasik wrote it, Nirtza Lo Yoichal, the Torah could have wrote Mefedish in a clear way. Nirtza Lo Yoichal, and it would have known for sure, and Nirtza cannot eat Truma. The Idach Asi, and the other one, which is Kani Kinyan Shagrim, I would have learned out with Kavachema. But nevertheless, Milsa Asi with Kavachema, nevertheless, even something that you can learn out of Kavachema, Tanam Kasla Akra. They'll tell you bothers to write it over again when you're talking about two separate gufim, so he wants to be Mechadish for each guf. Allah bin Gayatadam that went into the Kedashim. But you cannot get into the Kodesh HaKadoshim only if you go through the Heichel. Even the Ivsa B'Heichel, since it already became possible the Heichel, Lefnai Lefnim, my boy, what do you have to even talk about bringing it into the Kodesh HaKadoshim? We only need it for a case in a case where he brought it through a crooked way. He came through the rooftop or from an upper floor into the Kodesh HaKadoshim. It says, but finish, he came in the normal way. Hava means bederach haba, the normal kedarkei. Rava says, "Mina the chasher alai, shekol mina the chasher alai lefnai v'lefnim." That everything that let's say the kohen had in mind, if he had a specific kavanah that the blood should be sprayed dafka b'kodesh HaKadoshim, and he went into the heichal, loy mipsa b'heichal. The blood in itself entering the heichal is not going to be possible. The blood only when he fulfills his mashava, when he brings it into the Kodesh HaKadoshim. But if he brought it into heichal and he took it out, the dam will be kosher.